As you know, 88% of Australians are seriously concerned about inflation. It's why we talk about it at the top of the show every night. It is the number one issue that people want the government to be focused on. Way more than even healthcare, certainly more than climate change, and way more even than issues like defence. Even polls suggest that there's a big chunk of Australians who know this government is doing nothing to improve their circumstances. So today, when the Prime Minister turned up at the National Press Club, surely he was going to be battered from pillar to post on the issue that 88% of Australians are worried about and is the number one issue in the polls people want dealt with. Well, of course not. They were there to celebrate 100 days of the greatest Prime Minister of all time who's done nothing to help you when it comes to the cost of living.
It's 100 days in the age of Albo, an age that's committed to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, mended relationships with France and the Pacific Islands, made a flying visit to Ukraine, launched a royal commission.
That cost 150 million, that cost a few more.
Teased a possible collab with Fat Man Scoop and returned to Hawke-era beer sculling.
The Prime Minister has
that's
marked
not
his
toxic.
first 100 days in office.
The Prime Minister has today marked his
Cost
first
of living,
100 days
inflation.
in office.
Albo's first 100 days.
Oh, yeah. How good is he? 100 days, 100 days.
Approaching 100 days in office.
Anthony Albanese
all day,
reflects on
every
hitting
day.
a
This is all you
century of
heard.
days as captain of Australia.
About to be a major milestone for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, fast approaching his 100th day in office.
Yeah. You get it. That was the coverage, wall to wall, 100 days. Now, look, this 100 days in office thing is an American thing. At best, it goes back to presidents trying to deliver on things, maybe 100 days of the Congress. It's not really an Australian thing. It's only happened of recent times, the more that our media tries to pretend that they are living like the United States, i.e. Morrison is Trump and, Albo is Biden. Oh, he hasn't fallen up the stairs yet, so we haven't worked it out. But you talk about a gulf between the people who get the chance to ask our Prime Minister a question and the people who are paying for his lifestyle. Not one question in the National Press Club today, not one about cost of living. Instead, they were obsessing all day, every day, about the issues the government wants to talk about, not the issues that you want them to talk about, which means they are not doing their job. They are just loving that there's a new broom, that ministers now return their calls because maybe the previous ones didn't. The Prime Minister gives more interviews to all different types of people than the previous one did, and it's frankly an easier story for them to cover a brand new broom. But already they are saying that the next 100 days could be the real challenge for Albanese. Please. And I couldn't help but think, we talked about this a lot last night, so I'm not going to go over old ground. You should always be here on a Sunday night as well. But could you imagine if Scott Morrison or Tony Abbott or John Howard had a conversation about Indigenous issues here in Australia with a black man from the United States? What would the outrage have been? How many days would they have been, to use a Howardism, able to squeeze the lemon out of that story? Instead, again, not a single follow-up question today. Now, as I said last night, I've got no problem with him meeting famous people. That's what you do. When you're in the public life like they are, to see more popular, you hang out with people more popular than you. Thankfully, this didn't cost, like the selfie with Volodymyr Zelensky from the Ukraine, $150 million. But the backfilling of the reason for the speech, the reason for the appearance, of course, is garbage. Oh, we wanted him to voice his support for the Indigenous voice to Parliament. Garbage, rubbish. Just say he's more famous than me and I wanted to have a photo. That's okay. But the media, no follow-up. But could you imagine the think pieces in The Guardian about how typical of the Liberal politician to not know the difference between one black person and the Indigenous population of this country? Repeat. Let alone we would be having calls for a royal commission if Scott Morrison had tipped off the Cronulla Sharks about a decision that was yet to be made by National Cabinet. Well, that is exactly what Albo did this week. Now, one of their key players got COVID on Saturday, and if he was there under the 7-day isolation rule, he wouldn't be able to play in a game this weekend. But because it is most likely that National Cabinet will sign up this week to a 5-day isolation period, that bloke should be able to play. So what did South Sydney do? And apparently fully informed by the Prime Minister, either directly or his office. Yeah, that'll be sorted out on Wednesday, and we'll make sure to tell you that's the case. He then turns around and the club literally, they don't wait. They name him in the team for this weekend. Again, they're not making the decision to help South Sydney. But could you imagine the carry-on, the pants on fire, the wall-to-wall pearl clutching at Radio National if Scott Morrison was caught, revealed, to be tipping off his football team about a decision of National Cabinet that was not yet made. Now, I know that complaining about double standards doesn't change them, but it gives me some fresh perspective about the reality of the fight that we are up against. But that doesn't mean we're wrong, and it doesn't mean that we're going to lose. These people will run a protection racket for a Prime Minister who promised big but has delivered little. They will find every and any way to run his line because it helps them, because they get greater access to power. They have a political class that ends up delivering more of what they want while they live in the bubble that is the Press Gallery of Canberra or Canberra itself. Yet opinion poll after opinion poll, organisation after organisation says A1, the number one issue is cost of living. Cost of living. Number one, 88% of people concerned. Now, the double standards are obvious, but again, it just gives us an idea that that's okay. That's what you're up against. But at some point in time, the Australian people, they just call BS and they start to go around. Well, we will be there on either side of that debate in the coming little while.